Hello, BookTube, and welcome to March Mystery Madness. I've let March Mystery Madness fall by the wayside because what was going to be a venerable BookTube tradition of celebrating all things murder mysteries in the month of March turned out to be a side note for the corona apocalypse that has shut down the entire world. But before we finish off March, I wanted to do another March Mystery Madness Mystery Monday. And I noticed a few booktubers doing videos of some of their favorite murder mystery detectives. A list like that would be very long for me. But I thought I would give you 5 recommendations of sleuths, of murder mystery detectives in historical settings that I can talk about a bit and recommend to you. And the first one I've mentioned on this channel many times before. It's the Judge Dee Mysteries by Robert Van Gulik, about a 7th century Chinese magistrate who had named Judge Dee, who had the power of the law personified in his body. Was a figure of reverence in all of the villages and monasteries that he visits in the course of his crime solving, because there's no process. The due process is embodied in him. He investigates. He dispenses punishment. He is the roving band of the law in his own district, and the stories are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. The next one I want to recommend to you is a detective who's a little bit unlikely, but then again, if the Mitford sisters can be crime-solving sleuths, then pretty much anybody can be. And this next one is this is a series by Lillian DeTore called Dr. Johnson Detector, and they are murder mysteries starring Samuel Johnson, narrated by Boswell, and the author is steeped in the prose and the rhetoric and the rhythms of Boswell's Life of Johnson. And oh my, the mysteries are slight, but the atmosphere building around Johnson's world is just incredibly good, just amazingly good. So I want to recommend them. I don't know if any of these things are in print, but the next one I want to recommend is a series of 3 novels that aren't on the radar enough for how good they are. They're by Nick Drake, and they star a chief detective in ancient Egypt called Ra-Hotep. And the books are called Tutankhamun, Nefertiti, and then the third and final book, as far as I know, that Nick Drake has ever written in this series was disastrously called Egypt. What leads people to give books amorphous, bilious titles like that? I have no idea, and we're going to get to an even worse title on this list. But the Ra-Hotep novels are incredibly good, incredibly atmospheric, and with that edge of real consequences involved, which can sometimes be missing in historical murder mysteries, where the writer has studied and researched the period so much that they can't really escape from the idea that history has already happened, that history is over. I've mentioned on this channel before that some of my favorite historians or especially some of my favorite historical novelists, do manage to do that. They do manage to get out of that mind frame. They do manage to remember that history hasn't happened to the people who are living in it. It hasn't happened to them yet. They don't know how it's going to come out. They have urgent day-to-day exigence. And a novel that's bound up in plot, the way genre writing is, can be fatally marred if you're writing by the lamp, if you're writing from historical footnotes. And some historical murder mysteries suffer from that, even if they're good in every other respect. But these ancient Egypt novels by Nick Drake don't have that at all. They are wonderful. The next one I want to recommend, this is much slighter. These are by Robert Lee Hall, and they are murder mysteries in which the crimes are solved by Benjamin Franklin. I think the first one is called Benjamin Franklin Takes the Case, and they involve an older Franklin, and not there is a very fertile ground. In fact, I'm sure that somebody has written in this ground. There is a very fertile ground for a much younger Franklin. Franklin was pretty impressive physically, mentally, morally, linguistically, and every other way when he was a younger man. Now, he grew more and more impressive as he grew older, but he grew less impressive physically. He had bad gout. He had kidney stones, and he tended to rest on his laurels when he was older. He wasn't expecting at all that he would have to, that the occasion he would have to stop resting on his laurels would be to give birth to another country on the map. He wasn't expecting that at all. These are an older Franklin in these mysteries, and they're very good. I wish that someone were doing. I don't think I shouldn't beline him. I don't think that Robert Lee Hall is still writing Benjamin Franklin murder mysteries. I should have checked ahead of time, but I don't think that he is, and I don't think anybody else is either, and that's a shame because there's a lot of material there. And then the last one I want to recommend, talk about a bad title. Oh my. If I were the dictator of books, I would call moratorium on a certain number of titles for books. Not because I want to squash the free speech of authors, but because some titles have been just done to death, and nothing should ever be called by these things again. No, you should never name a book after a cliche or an idiom to start with. Sorry, James Patterson, but you never should. And you also, there are some that have been used so often that they must never be used again. And the one that I want to talk to you about comes out in July, if it holds to its pub date, and it's by M.J. Troe. It's a Christopher Marlowe murder mystery, and it is called The Reckoning. Christopher Marlowe has inspired probably, I don't know, 5,100 books since his untimely death in Deptford. 5,100 would be a conservative estimate. And of those 5,100 books, fiction, nonfiction, murder mysteries, erotica, you name it, of those 5,100 books, I think probably 4,890 have been called The Reckoning, and that is just inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. M.J. Troe's publishers should have said, no, you can call it anything else, but you can't call it that. But one way or another, the book is amazingly good. Just amazingly good. It's crammed, first of all, on sentence and paragraph level, absolutely crammed with echoes and allusions, not only from Marlowe's work, but also from Thomas Kidd and, of course, William Shakespeare, who appears in these murder mysteries as an aspiring backbench second stringer, a bit of a country oaf. But that's kind of the fun of these Marlowe. I've read all of Troe's Marlowe murder mysteries. They're fantastic. And this one, I don't know if it's going to get delayed, its publication date. I'm seeing that a lot of publishers are delaying April and May publication dates for their books, but I haven't noticed much movement on summer titles. Bit of optimism there. People thinking that maybe things will be back to normal. But one way or another, you don't need to read any of the books in sequence. For instance, the Nick Drake Ra-Hotep novels are better read in sequence. But like Judge Dee, the only thing that changes in Judge Dee will be his age and the number of wives he has. He stays exactly the same. And the same thing is true of these M.J. Troe, Christopher Marlowe novels, that you can read them in any sequence. The Reckoning is a fine place to start, and it's delightful. It's delightful because it partakes of the same thing as the Nick Drake novels, where even though everything is set in stone, we know every detail about how Christopher Marlowe dies. We know who's in the room with him, and those people show up in this murder mystery, only they don't know, and he doesn't know, that the paths of their fate are going to cross in a little room in Deptford. He has no idea. We know, as readers do, and that is such a temptation for a historical novelist. Troe must have been so tempted to lay on the heavy-handed foreshadowing, and it doesn't happen throughout the book, and that is great. Same thing with the heavy-handed foreshadowing of Shakespeare, that he will become the most famous author in the history of the world, and that is not present. There is no joshing at his expense. Same thing with all of the political intrigue that goes on in this book and in all the previous books. So I want to recommend those 5: Judge Dee, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Franklin, Ra-Hotep, and Christopher Marlowe. And of those, the only one who probably didn't, we don't know for sure about Judge Dee. I'm thinking that someone like him probably did exist. There probably is a lot of fact at the bottom of the folklore cycle that has given birth to him for centuries. Ra-Hotep did not exist. Ra-Hotep is one of many, many, many series of murder mysteries set in ancient Egypt. But all the others are real people, were real figures in history, and that's always fascinating to me. So I wanted to finish off March Mystery Madness with a roster of detectives, some of my favorite detectives. I would gobble up another book by any of these authors with these characters. I don't think there'll be any more of any of these series, but I would love it. I'd love it if there were. And I will leave a link to March Mystery Madness to Elizabeth at Lizzie Faye Loves Books so you can catch up on your March Mystery Madness videos if you've fallen behind these last 2 weeks, and also to express a note of gratitude. I love this event. I neglected it when a pandemic broke out, but I love this event because I love murder mysteries. Absolutely love them. So we will go on talking about them in April and May and whatnot. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.